Ethan Carter slammed his fist on the conference table. $500 in crisp bills scattered across the polished wood. "I'm not for sale," he said. Victoria Hayes, the most powerful woman in the building, stared at him like no one had ever refused her before. 7 days later, she called him to the 36th floor. Not to fire him, not to apologize. She looked him straight in the eye and said, "I need you to pretend to be my husband for 1 year." Ethan's heart stopped. Then he asked the only question that mattered. "So, we're sharing a bed." And that was when the real trouble began. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Ethan Carter had learned a long time ago that hope was expensive, and he couldn't afford it anymore. It was 8:47 on a Monday night. The office was empty. Everyone else had gone home hours ago, back to their families, their dinners, their lives. Ethan was still at his desk, staring at a screen full of words that meant nothing. Writing taglines for products nobody would remember. His phone buzzed. He grabbed it, saw the daycare number, and his stomach dropped. "Mr. Carter." "Yeah, what's wrong?" "Lily has a fever. It's not serious yet, but if it doesn't break by morning, you'll need to pick her up early." "I'll be there." "We know you will, Mr. Carter. You always are." He hung up and sat there for a moment, rubbing his eyes. 3 years. 3 years since Sarah died, and he still hadn't figured out how to do this alone. Every day felt like running on a treadmill that kept speeding up while someone piled weights on his back. $120,000 in medical debt. 2 months behind on rent. A daughter who deserved better than a father who was slowly drowning. Ethan saved his document, shut down his computer, and grabbed his jacket. He needed to get home. He needed to check on Lily. He needed to figure out how to make it through another week. He was halfway to the elevator when he turned the corner too fast and collided with someone. A leather portfolio flew from her hands. Papers scattered across the floor like leaves in a storm. "I'm so sorry." Ethan dropped to his knees and started gathering the documents. The woman crouched across from him. Her movements were precise, controlled, like every action had been calculated in advance. Ethan looked up and recognized her instantly. Victoria Hayes, Vice President of Hayes Marketing Group, daughter of the founder. The kind of woman who didn't make small talk in the break room because she didn't need to. At 29 years old, she had more power than most people accumulated in a lifetime. And she was looking at Ethan like he was a stain on her expensive shoes. "Sorry," he said again, handing her the folder. "I wasn't watching where I was going." Victoria took the portfolio and stood. Her expression revealed nothing. "Thank you," she said. No warmth, no acknowledgement. Just 2 words delivered like a transaction. She turned to leave. That should have been the end of it. But Ethan noticed something she had missed. A cream-colored envelope, sealed and embossed, half hidden beneath a filing cabinet near the wall. "Wait!" he called out. Victoria stopped, but didn't turn around. Ethan jogged toward her, holding out the envelope. "You dropped this." She turned, looked at the envelope, then looked at him. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise maybe, or suspicion. She took the envelope and opened her purse. She pulled out 5 crisp $100 bills and held them toward him. Ethan stared at the money. Then he stared at her. "I was just returning something that wasn't mine," he said. "I don't need to be paid for that." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Everyone needs money, Mr. Carter. Ethan Carter." He shook his head. "And no, not for this." He turned and walked away, leaving Victoria Hayes standing in the hallway with $500 still in her hand. Victoria did not forget. She went back to her office, sat down at her computer, and pulled up the employee directory. Ethan Carter, copywriter, lower tier, single father, financial history severely strained, no corporate alliances, no connections to anyone who mattered, no connections to her brother Marcus. Victoria leaned back in her chair and considered this. Marcus had been circling her position for years. Their father had always favored him, groomed him to take over the company from the time he was 16. Victoria had been an afterthought, the daughter who wasn't supposed to want anything. Then their father died and left everything to her. Almost everything. There was a clause in the will, a condition. The person in control of Hayes Marketing Group had to be married. If Victoria wasn't married by her 30th birthday, control of the company would transfer to Marcus. Her birthday was in 11 months. Marcus knew it. The board knew it. Everyone was waiting for Victoria to fail. She needed a husband. Not a real one, she didn't have time for that. She needed someone who would sign a contract, play a role, and disappear when it was over. She needed someone she could control, someone clean, someone desperate, someone who had no reason to refuse. Victoria looked at Ethan Carter's file again. He fit the profile perfectly. 7 days later, Ethan received an email from Human Resources. He read it 3 times, trying to figure out what he had done wrong. Meeting request. Location, 36th floor, executive conference room. Time, 9:00 a.m. Requested by Victoria Hayes. No explanation, no context, just a summons. Ethan barely slept that night. He kept running through every mistake he might have made, every deadline. He might have missed every reason why the vice president of the entire company would want to see him personally. He showed up at 8:55, wearing the only suit he owned that still fit. His hands were sweating. His heart was pounding. The 36th floor was nothing like the rest of the building. Everything was glass and steel, sharp edges, and cold light. The receptionist directed him to a conference room at the end of the hall. He walked in and found Victoria sitting at the head of a long table. She was wearing a black dress that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her expression was unreadable. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down, Mr. Carter." Ethan sat. Victoria studied him for a moment like she was examining a piece of furniture she was considering purchasing. "I've reviewed your employment record," she said. "You're competent, reliable, unremarkable." Ethan didn't know how to respond to that, so he didn't. "I need you to do something for me," Victoria continued. "Something that has nothing to do with your job." Ethan's stomach tightened. "What kind of something?" Victoria folded her hands on the table. "I need a husband." The words hit him like a punch to the chest. "Excuse me?" "Not a real husband," she said, as if that clarified anything. "A contract. 12 months. No emotion, no complications. Just a performance." Ethan stared at her. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Victoria continued, her voice flat and businesslike. "My father's will requires me to be married in order to maintain control of this company. If I'm not married by my 30th birthday, 11 months from now, everything transfers to my brother." "Your brother," Ethan repeated. "Marcus Hayes. You may have seen him around the building. Expensive suits, expensive smile, absolutely no conscience." "Why me?" Victoria's expression didn't change. "Because you have no reason to refuse." She opened a folder and slid it across the table toward him. "I know everything about you, Mr. Carter. I know you owe $120,000 in medical debt from your wife's illness. I know you're 2 months behind on rent. I know your daughter's daycare is barely covered, and you're 1 bad month away from losing everything." Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. "I can fix all of that," Victoria said. "I can erase your debt, double your salary, provide full health insurance, set up an education fund for your daughter that will cover everything through college." She leaned forward slightly. "All you have to do is play the role." Ethan's mind was racing. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. "What does playing the role mean?" he asked. "It means moving into my penthouse, attending family dinners, posing for photographs, convincing my brother and the board that we're a real couple." Ethan swallowed hard. "And what about—" He stopped, not sure how to phrase it. "What about what?" He forced himself to ask. "Are we sharing a bed?" Victoria's expression flickered the first crack in her armor he had seen. "Only when necessary," she said. "Only when we need to convince someone who matters." Ethan sat back in his chair. His head was spinning. Everything about this was insane. Everything about this was wrong. But everything about his life was falling apart, and this woman was offering him a lifeline. "I need time to think about it," he said. "You have 24 hours. Victoria stood and handed him a folder with the contract terms written out in dense legal language. "Read it carefully, Mr. Carter. This is a business arrangement. Nothing more, nothing less." She walked him to the door. "One more thing," Ethan said, turning back. "Why did you really pick me? There must be hundreds of people you could have chosen." Victoria looked at him for a long moment. "Because you refused the money," she said. "In the hallway. When you returned my envelope. You didn't want anything from me." She paused. "That's rare." She closed the door, and Ethan stood in the hallway alone, holding a folder that could change his entire life. That night, Ethan sat in his daughter's room and watched her sleep. Lily was small for her age. Her breathing was soft and steady, her fever finally broken. She was clutching a stuffed dinosaur, her favorite, the one she had named Mr. Rex when she was 3, and refused to rename, even though she now knew real dinosaurs didn't wear bow ties. Ethan thought about the life he was giving her. The cramped apartment with the water stain on the ceiling. The second-hand clothes from the thrift store. The way she had asked him last week why they never went to the places her friends went. The amusement parks, the vacations, the birthday parties at expensive venues. He had told her that they had everything they needed. That money wasn't what mattered. That love was enough. But sitting here now watching her sleep, he wondered if he had been lying to himself. Love didn't pay the bills. Love didn't erase the debt collector's calls. Love didn't guarantee that Lily would have opportunities, that she would go to college, that she would have a future better than the one he was barely holding together. Victoria Hayes was offering him all of that. All he had to do was pretend. Ethan pulled out his phone and stared at the screen. His thumb hovered over the keyboard for a long time. Then he typed, "I'll do it, but my daughter stays out of it. No publicity, no involvement. She's not part of the deal." The response came back in less than 2 minutes. "Agreed. The contract will be ready tomorrow." Ethan set the phone down and closed his eyes. He had just sold himself. He wasn't sure if that made him smart or desperate. Probably both. The contract was signed 3 days later in a lawyer's office downtown. Ethan read every word, even though half of it didn't make sense. The important parts were clear enough. 12 months, no emotional attachment, no physical relationship unless required for appearance's full termination at the end of the term. He signed his name at the bottom. Victoria signed hers. The lawyer notarized the documents and handed them each a copy. Victoria shook Ethan's hand. Her grip was firm and brief. "Welcome to the family, Mr. Carter," she said. It felt like sealing a deal with the devil. Ethan moved into the penthouse on a Friday. The place was enormous, the kind of apartment that belonged in magazines, not real life. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Furniture that looked expensive and uncomfortable. Art on the walls that probably cost more than his annual salary. Victoria showed him to a guest room at the far end of the hall. "This is yours," she said. "My room is on the other side of the apartment. We don't need to see each other unless there's an event." Ethan set his bag down and looked around. The room was bigger than his entire old apartment. "The rules," Victoria said. "No crossing boundaries, no personal questions, no expectations beyond what's in the contract. We're business partners, nothing more." "Got it." Victoria turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "There's a family dinner on Sunday," she said. "My brother will be there. He's going to try to figure out if this is real. You need to be convincing." "I will be." "I hope so, Mr. Carter, because if Marcus finds out this is fake, we both lose everything." She left, and Ethan sat down on the bed. He thought about Lily, safe with a babysitter for the weekend. He thought about the contract sitting in his bag. He thought about the woman down the hall who had just bought a year of his life. What the hell had he gotten himself into, Amdeg? Sunday came faster than Ethan expected. The family dinner was at the Hayes estate, a massive property outside the city that looked like something out of a period drama. Ethan had never been anywhere like it. He felt like an imposter the moment he walked through the front door. Victoria stayed close to him, her hand occasionally touching his arm in a way that looked natural but felt rehearsed. "Remember," she whispered as they entered the dining room, "we've been seeing each other for 6 months. We kept it quiet because of the office. Don't volunteer information unless you have to." "Got it." Marcus Hayes was already there. He was leaning against a bar cart in the corner, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He was tall, polished, and handsome in a way that felt manufactured. His smile was warm and welcoming and completely fake. "Victoria," Marcus said, pushing off the bar and walking toward them. "You didn't tell me you were bringing someone." "I'm full of surprises," Victoria said. Marcus turned his attention to Ethan extending his hand. "Marcus Hayes. The other Hayes." His grip was just a little too tight. "And you are Ethan Carter." "Ethan Carter." Marcus repeated the name like he was filing it away for later. "I don't think I've seen you around before. What do you do?" "He's in marketing," Victoria cut in. "We met at the office." "Marketing." Marcus's smile widened. "How romantic." They sat down to dinner. The table was long enough to seat 20 people, but there were only 6 of them. Victoria, Ethan, Marcus, and 3 board members who seemed more interested in their wine than the conversation. Ethan played his part. He sat close to Victoria. He laughed at the right moments. He put his hand on the back of her chair the way a husband would. Victoria placed her hand over his at one point. A brief touch, natural looking. But Marcus watched everything. He asked questions that seemed innocent but weren't. "How did you two meet? What was your first date like?" "When did you know it was serious?" Victoria answered. "Most of them." Ethan filled in the gaps. They had rehearsed this. They had a story, a timeline, all the details a real couple would have. But Marcus's eyes never stopped calculating. After dinner, when Victoria excused herself to the restroom, Marcus cornered Ethan by the fireplace. "She didn't mention you before," Marcus said, swirling his drink. "Not once, and Victoria tells me everything. Maybe she wanted to keep something for herself." "Maybe." Marcus stepped closer. "Or maybe this is something else entirely." Ethan kept his expression neutral. "I don't know what you mean." "I mean my sister has never done anything without a reason. And you?" Marcus looked him up and down. "You don't seem like her type." "People change." "No, they don't." Marcus smiled. "Not really. Not when something this important is on the line." He patted Ethan on the shoulder and walked away. Victoria returned a moment later. "What did he say to you? He doesn't believe us." Victoria's jaw tightened. "He never believes anything I do is real." She took a breath. "We need to be more convincing, starting now." She took Ethan's hand, not the careful, staged touch from earlier, but something tighter, more desperate. "Whatever it takes," she said. "We have to make this work." Ethan looked at her, saw the fear beneath the control, and nodded. "Whatever it takes." The drive home was silent. Victoria stared out the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Ethan kept his hands on the steering wheel and his eyes on the road. Finally, she spoke. "Marcus has been trying to take the company from me for years. Everything I build, he tries to tear down. Every success I have, he finds a way to diminish." "Why does he hate you so much?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Because our father chose me. In the end, despite everything, despite grooming Marcus his whole life, he left the company to me." She turned to look at Ethan. "Marcus has never forgiven me for that, and he never will." "So this isn't just about the will?" "No, it's about proving I was never supposed to be here in the first place." Victoria's voice hardened. And I refuse to give him that satisfaction. They pulled into the parking garage beneath the penthouse. Victoria didn't move to get out. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For tonight. For going through with this." Ethan nodded. "It's what I signed up for." "No." Victoria looked at him. "It's more than that. You could have walked in there and sabotaged everything. You could have taken Marcus's side, but you didn't." "Why would I do that?" "Because people always do. In my experience, everyone has a price." Ethan thought about the contract, about the money, about everything Victoria was giving him. "Maybe I do too," he said. "I'm just not sure what it is yet." Victoria studied him for a long moment. Then she opened her door and stepped out. "Good night, Ethan." It was the first time she had used his first name. "Good night, Victoria." She walked toward the elevator, and Ethan sat in the car alone, thinking about what he had gotten himself into, and wondering if there was any way out that didn't end with both of them losing everything. The first 2 weeks in the penthouse felt like living inside a photograph. Everything was perfect, polished, and completely lifeless. Victoria left for work before Ethan woke up. She came home after he had already eaten dinner alone at the kitchen island. They exchanged maybe 10 sentences a day, and most of those were about logistics. "There's a charity event on Friday." "What time?" 7. "Wear the gray suit." "Okay." That was the extent of their marriage. Ethan spent his evenings on the couch flipping through channels he didn't care about, counting the hours until it was acceptable to go to bed. The guest room was comfortable, more comfortable than any bed he'd ever owned, but sleep didn't come easy. He would lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering what Lily was doing. Wondering if she missed him. Wondering if he was making a terrible mistake. On weekends, he went back to his old apartment to see her. Those were the only hours that felt real. "Daddy, where do you go during the week?" Lily asked one Saturday afternoon. They were sitting on the floor of her room building a tower out of blocks that kept falling down. "I told you, sweetheart. Daddy has a new job. I have to stay somewhere else for a while." "But why can't I come with you?" Ethan's chest tightened. "Because it's complicated, baby. But I'm always going to come back. Every weekend. I promise." Lily looked at him with those big brown eyes, Sarah's eyes, and nodded slowly. "Okay, Daddy. But I miss you." "I miss you too, Lily. More than you know." He held her tight and tried not to think about the penthouse, about Victoria, about the contract that was keeping him away from the only person who actually mattered. 3 weeks after he moved in, Victoria told him about another family dinner. "This one's different," she said. They were standing in the kitchen, Victoria pouring herself a cup of coffee that she probably wouldn't finish. "It's at a restaurant downtown. Marcus will be there. So will 2 board members." "Which ones?" "Gregory Palmer and David Chen. They're the swing votes on the board. If Marcus convinces them that our marriage is fake, they'll side with him when the time comes. So we need to be convincing. More than convincing." Victoria set down her cup and looked at him. "We need to be perfect." The restaurant was exactly what Ethan expected: white tablecloths, waiters in formal attire, prices that weren't listed on the menu, because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. They arrived 15 minutes early. Victoria wore a black dress that looked like it cost more than Ethan's car. He wore the gray suit she had picked out for him. "Remember," Victoria said as they waited at the table, "we've been married for 2 months now. We're still in the honeymoon phase. Act like it." "I don't know what that looks like for you." "It looks like you actually want to be here." "I do want to be here." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Then stop looking like you're about to face a firing squad." Marcus arrived exactly on time, flanked by the 2 board members. He greeted Victoria with a kiss on the cheek that lingered just a second too long. "Sister," he said warmly, "you look beautiful as always." "Marcus." Victoria's smile was thin. "Thank you for coming." Marcus turned to Ethan and extended his hand. "Ethan, good to see you again." "Likewise." They sat down and the performance began. Gregory Palmer, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a voice like gravel, wasted no time. "So, Ethan," he said, unfolding his napkin with deliberate precision. "Victoria tells us you work in marketing." "That's right." "Entry level? Mid-level? Copywriting mostly?" "Interesting." Gregory's tone suggested it was anything but. "And that's how you two met at the office?" "Yes." "I would have thought Victoria preferred someone more established." Ethan felt the barb but didn't flinch. "She says I keep her grounded." Victoria reached across the table and placed her hand over Ethan's. "He does, more than he knows." Marcus watched the exchange without saying a word. His eyes moved between them like he was watching a tennis match waiting for someone to make an unforced error. The appetizers arrived. Small talk filled the gaps. But every few minutes Marcus would drop another question, another probe, another attempt to find the crack in their armor. "Where did you go on your honeymoon?" "We didn't take one," Victoria said. "We've both been too busy with work." "That's a shame. Every marriage needs a honeymoon." "We'll get around to it." "Will you?" Marcus smiled. "You know, I've been thinking about this a lot. You and Ethan, it just seems so sudden." "Some things don't need time, Marcus. Some things just make sense." "Do they?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Because I remember you telling me not 6 months ago that you had no interest in relationships, that they were distractions, that the company was all that mattered." Victoria's grip on Ethan's hand tightened. "People change," she said. "No, they don't." Marcus's smile widened. "Not really. Not when something important is on the line." The rest of the dinner was a minefield. Every question had a trap hidden inside it. Every answer required careful navigation. By the time they left, Ethan's jaw ached from clenching it. In the car, Victoria didn't speak. She stared out the window, her reflection ghostly against the city lights. "He doesn't believe us," Ethan said finally. "No." "What do we do?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "We try harder." The following week, the city lost power. A storm rolled through after midnight, knocking out electricity across 3 neighborhoods. The penthouse went dark just after 10 o'clock. Ethan was in the living room when it happened. One moment he was watching television, the next, everything went black. He heard footsteps in the hallway. "Ethan!" "In here!" Victoria appeared holding her phone like a flashlight. The glow cast strange shadows across her face. "Backup generator should kick in soon," she said. It didn't. Ethan found 2 wine glasses in the dark and poured them each a drink from a bottle he'd seen on the counter. Victoria sat on the opposite end of the couch, her legs tucked under her. They sat there in the darkness, not speaking. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Finally, Victoria spoke. "Why did you really agree to this?" Ethan took a sip of wine. "You already know why." "I know what the contract says. I know the numbers. I want to know what you were thinking when you signed it." Ethan stared into the darkness. "I was thinking about my daughter," he said. "About what kind of father lets his kid grow up poor when he has a chance to fix it. About all the things I couldn't give her, the birthday parties, the vacations, the future she deserves." He paused. "I was thinking that maybe selling a year of my life was worth it if it meant she could have something better." "Do you regret it?" "I don't know yet." He turned to look at her even though he could barely see her face. "Do you?" "No." Victoria's voice was firm. "I would do whatever it takes to keep Marcus from winning. He's been trying to destroy me for years. I refuse to let him." "Why does he hate you so much? I mean, really? Beyond the company?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "Because I exist," she said finally. "Because our father saw something in me that he never saw in Marcus, and Marcus has spent his entire life trying to prove that was a mistake." "Your father chose you over him." "In the end, yes." Victoria's voice dropped. Marcus was supposed to inherit everything. He was groomed for it, trained for it. And then at the last moment, our father changed his will. Left the company to me with that ridiculous marriage clause attached. Why did he do that? I don't know. Maybe he finally saw who Marcus really was. Maybe he wanted to give me a chance to prove myself. She laughed bitterly. Or maybe he just wanted to watch us tear each other apart from beyond the grave. That's dark. That's my family. They sat in silence again, but it felt different now. Less empty. What about your family? Victoria asked. You never talk about them. Ethan took another drink. There's not much to talk about. My parents are gone. It's just me and Lily. And your wife? The question hung in the air. Sarah died 3 years ago, Ethan said quietly. Cancer. It was quick in the end. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. I'm sorry. Everyone says that. I mean it. Ethan looked at her. In the faint glow of their phones, he could see something in her expression he hadn't seen before. Sincerity. Maybe even empathy. The last 6 months of her life, the hospital became our second home, he said. I was there every day. Lily was too young to understand. She kept asking when Mommy was coming home. He swallowed hard. I didn't know how to tell her that Mommy wasn't coming home, that nothing was ever going to be the same. How did you get through it? I didn't. Not really. I just kept moving, one foot in front of the other. Wake up, take care of Lily, go to work, pay the bills, try not to drown. He set down his glass. That's been my life for 3 years, just trying not to drown. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I've never lost anyone like that, she said. Both my parents are gone, but it was different. Expected. There was time to prepare. You can't prepare for losing someone you love. You just survive it. Is that what you're doing, surviving? Ethan thought about the question. I don't know, he said honestly. I thought so, but lately... He shook his head. Lately I've started to think that maybe surviving isn't enough. Maybe Lily deserves more than a father who's just going through the motions. She seems lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one. She's the only reason I get up in the morning. They talked until the power came back on 2 hours later. Victoria told him about growing up in the Hayes mansion, about being invisible until it was convenient for her not to be, about the expectations that had been placed on her shoulders from the moment she was born. When the lights flickered back to life, they both blinked against the sudden brightness. Victoria stood and smoothed down her clothes. I should get some work done, she said. It's almost midnight. There's always work. She walked toward her office, then stopped at the doorway and looked back. Thank you, she said, for talking. I don't do this very often. Talk? Let someone see behind the curtain. She disappeared into her office, and Ethan sat on the couch alone, thinking about the woman who had bought his loyalty, and wondering if she had ever had anyone in her life who had given it to her for free. The next Saturday, something unexpected happened. Ethan was making breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, the same thing he made every weekend, when he picked up Lily when Victoria walked into the kitchen. She was dressed casually, jeans and a sweater. No makeup. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. Ethan had never seen her look like that before. Good morning, she said. Morning? He glanced at her, then back at the stove. You're up early, for a Saturday. I was thinking. Victoria hesitated. You're seeing your daughter today, right? Yeah, picking her up in an hour. Could I come? Ethan stopped stirring the eggs. Come where? With you, to see your daughter. Victoria crossed her arms, looking almost defensive. I want to see what your life looks like outside of all this. Ethan didn't know what to say. They had agreed Lily was off limits. She wasn't part of the deal. But something in Victoria's expression made him reconsider. Why? he asked. Because I spend 20 hours a day thinking about the company, about Marcus, about this arrangement. And I'm tired of it. She looked at him. I want to see something real, even if it's just for an afternoon. Ethan studied her for a long moment. Okay, he said finally. But you follow my lead. And if Lily asks who you are, I'll say I'm your friend. Deal. Ethan was pushing Lily on the swings when Victoria arrived. She walked across the park slowly, like she wasn't sure she belonged there. The jeans and sweater made her look younger, almost normal. Lily noticed her first. Daddy, who's that lady? That's my friend Victoria. She wanted to come say hi. Victoria approached and smiled. It wasn't the cold, controlled smile she wore in meetings. It was softer, almost nervous. Hi, Lily, she said. Your dad talks about you all the time. Lily studied her with the fearless directness that only children possess. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? Ethan opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came out. Victoria crouched down to Lily's level. Something like that, she said. Lily tilted her head. Does that mean you're going to be my new mom? The question hit like a thunderbolt. Ethan saw the panic flash in Victoria's eyes, raw and unguarded. That's not how it works, sweetheart, Ethan said quickly. Victoria is just a friend, a special friend. Lily seemed to accept this. Okay. She turned back to the swings. Push me higher, Daddy. Crisis averted. Victoria stood up and Ethan could see her hands were shaking slightly. Sorry about that, he said quietly. Kids ask whatever's on their mind. It's fine. But her voice was strained. She's beautiful, Ethan. She looks just like you. She has her mother's eyes. They walked along the edge of the pond while Lily ran ahead chasing ducks that had no intention of being caught. What does she know? Victoria asked. About us. About the arrangement. Nothing. And it's going to stay that way. That's probably smart. She's been through enough. Losing her mom. Having her dad disappear during the week. She doesn't need to know the rest. Victoria nodded slowly. You're a good father, Ethan. I try. No. Victoria stopped walking and looked at him. I mean it. What you're doing for her, all of this, the contract, giving up a year of your life, that takes courage. Or desperation. Maybe both. Victoria smiled slightly. But she's lucky to have you. Someone who would do anything for her. She paused. I don't think I've ever had anyone in my life who would do that for me. The admission caught Ethan off guard. What about your family? My family treats love like a transaction, something to be earned, never given. Victoria's gaze drifted to Lily, who was now trying to climb a tree. I used to think that was normal, that everyone's family was like that. It's not. I know that now. She turned back to Ethan. But knowing it and feeling it are two different things. They stood there for a moment, watching Lily scramble up the trunk with more determination than skill. I should go, Victoria said finally. I have calls to make. On a Saturday. There's always calls to make. She started to walk away, then stopped. Thank you, she said, for letting me come today. You're welcome. Victoria left without looking back. That night, Ethan lay in bed and thought about the way she had looked at Lily, not with detached politeness, but with something quieter, something that looked like longing. He wondered what her life would have been like if she had been allowed to want things that weren't tied to power or legacy. 2 weeks later, Victoria told him they needed wedding photos. The family needs proof, she said. They were sitting at the kitchen counter reviewing a calendar of upcoming events. Real married couples have wedding photos. We don't have any. We didn't have a wedding. Then we fake it, just like everything else. The photographer met them at a studio downtown. He was young, enthusiastic, and clearly had no idea what he was dealing with. Okay, let's start with something simple, he said, positioning them in front of a white backdrop. Just stand next to each other. Relax. Look natural. Ethan stood next to Victoria. Their shoulders were touching. "A little closer," the photographer said. "You're married, not business partners." Ethan moved closer. He could smell Victoria's perfume, something subtle and expensive. "Now hold hands." They held hands. Victoria's fingers were cold. "Great. Now, Victoria, rest your head on his shoulder." She did. Ethan felt her breath against his neck. "Perfect." Ethan, put your arm around her waist. Ethan hesitated. "It's fine," Victoria whispered. "Just do it." He put his arm around her waist. She leaned into him. "Beautiful," the photographer said. "Now look at each other." They turned to face each other. Ethan looked into Victoria's eyes, and for a moment, the studio fell away. The photographer, the backdrop, the entire charade, all of it disappeared. All he could see was her. And in her eyes, he saw something he hadn't expected. Vulnerability. Fear. The same things he felt every time he thought about the next 10 months. The photographer snapped the photo. Victoria stepped back immediately, and the moment shattered like glass. "That should be enough," she said, her voice businesslike again. "Send us the proofs by Friday." In the car, neither of them spoke. Ethan kept thinking about that moment, the way she had looked at him, the way for just a second it hadn't felt like acting. When they got back to the penthouse, Victoria went straight to her office and closed the door. Ethan sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling. He was starting to realize that the lines they had drawn were not as clear as either of them had thought. That night he dreamed about Sarah. She was standing in the doorway of their old apartment wearing the yellow sundress she had worn on their first date. She was smiling. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "Am I? Lily needs a future. You're giving her one. But what about me? What am I giving myself?" Sarah's smile softened. "That's the wrong question, Ethan. The question isn't what you're giving yourself. It's what you're allowing yourself to receive." He woke up before he could ask her what she meant. The next morning, Victoria was already gone when he came out for coffee. But there was a note on the counter. "Thank you for yesterday. I know it wasn't easy." V. Ethan read it 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. He wasn't sure why, but it felt important. A month passed, then another. The events blurred together: charity galas, board dinners, cocktail parties where Ethan smiled and shook hands and played the role of devoted husband. Each time Marcus was there, watching, waiting, looking for the crack that would bring everything crashing down. But something was changing. The touches between Ethan and Victoria became less rehearsed. The conversations became less scripted. The silences became more comfortable. One night, after a particularly exhausting dinner, they sat in the back of the car on the way home. Victoria was tired. Ethan could see it in the way her shoulders sagged, the way she closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the seat. "You were good tonight," she said quietly. "Thanks." "Gregory seems to be coming around. He actually smiled at one of your jokes." It was a terrible joke. It was. But he laughed anyway. Victoria opened her eyes and looked at him. "You're better at this than I expected." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation." Ethan smiled. "I'll take it." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I've been thinking about what happens after. After the 12 months are up, after the contract ends." She turned to look out the window. "I've never thought about it before. The future always seemed like something I had to survive, not something I could actually plan for. And now I'm not sure." She paused. "For the first time in my life, I'm not sure what I want." Ethan didn't know how to respond to that, so he didn't say anything, but he reached over and took her hand. Victoria looked at him surprised. "This isn't for the cameras," he said. "There's no one watching. I just thought you could use it." Victoria stared at their joined hands for a long moment. Then her fingers tightened around his. "Thank you," she whispered. They held hands the rest of the way home, and when they got to the penthouse, Victoria didn't go straight to her office. She stood in the hallway looking at him. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night, Victoria." Neither of them moved. The air between them felt charged, like something was about to happen. Then Victoria turned and walked away. Ethan stood there alone, his heart pounding, wondering when everything had become so complicated. The next morning, there was an email waiting in Victoria's inbox. It was from Marcus, and when she read it, her hands started to shake. The email was addressed to the entire board, but it was really meant for Victoria. She read it 3 times, her hands trembling with each pass. The words blurred together. Concerns about leadership. Questions regarding corporate governance. Emergency board meeting requested. But the message was clear. Marcus was making his move. Victoria sat at her desk, staring at the screen, feeling like the ground had just been ripped out from under her. She had known this was coming. She had prepared for it. But seeing it in black and white, knowing that her brother was finally ready to destroy her, made everything feel terrifyingly real. Ethan found her there 20 minutes later. He had come to ask about dinner plans, something mundane, something normal. But the moment he saw her face, he knew something was wrong. "Victoria." She didn't look up. "Victoria, what happened?" She turned the monitor toward him. Ethan read the email. Then he read it again. "When?" he asked. "Thursday, 10 in the morning. That's 3 days from now." "I know." Ethan sat down in the chair across from her desk. "What does he have?" Victoria finally looked at him. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. She was too proud to cry. "Everything," she said. "He has everything. The contract, the financial transfers, the timeline of when your debts were paid." She laughed bitterly. "I was careful, Ethan. I was so careful. But Marcus has been watching me for months. He knew exactly where to look." "How is that possible?" "Because he's Marcus. Because he's spent his entire life learning how to tear people apart." Victoria stood up and walked to the window. "I should have seen this coming. I should have known he wouldn't just sit back and wait." "So what do we do?" Victoria was silent for a long moment. "I don't know," she said quietly. "For the first time in my life, I don't know what to do." Ethan had never heard her sound like that before, defeated, lost, vulnerable. It scared him more than the email had. He stood up and walked over to her. "We'll figure it out," he said. "We have 3 days. That's enough time to come up with something." "Come up with what?" "He has proof, Ethan. Real documented proof that our marriage is a sham." Victoria turned to face him. "The moment he presents that to the board, it's over. Everything I've worked for, everything I've built, gone. There has to be something we can do." "Like what lie? We've been lying for months. That's the whole problem." Ethan thought for a moment. "What if we stop lying?" Victoria stared at him. "What?" "What if we tell the truth? What if instead of trying to deny it, you walk into that boardroom and own it? Own it, Ethan, they'll crucify me. Maybe. Or maybe they'll respect you for being honest." Ethan stepped closer. "Think about it. Marcus is expecting you to panic. He's expecting you to deny everything, to make excuses, to dig yourself deeper into the hole. What if you do the opposite? What if you stand up there and say, 'Yes, I hired a husband. Yes, I bent the rules. And here's why.'" Victoria was quiet, processing. "That's insane," she said finally. "Is it? You've increased revenue by 38%. You've expanded into 2 new markets. You've made Hayes Marketing Group one of the most respected firms in the industry. None of that changes because of a marriage contract. The board won't see it that way. Then make them see it that way. Remind them who you are. Remind them what you've done." Ethan held her gaze. "You're not a fraud, Victoria. You're a woman who played the hand she was dealt. There's a difference." Victoria looked at him for a long moment. "You really believe that?" I do. Something shifted in her expression. The defeat was still there, but underneath it, Ethan could see something else emerging. Determination. Fire. It's a risk, she said. Everything worth doing is a risk. Victoria nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Let's do it your way. But if this blows up in our faces, I'm blaming you. Fair enough. For the first time since she had read the email, Victoria almost smiled. Thank you, Ethan, for not running. I told you I wouldn't. I know. I just didn't believe you. The next morning, Marcus called Ethan. The phone rang while Ethan was making coffee. He didn't recognize the number, but something in his gut told him to answer. Ethan Carter. Ethan, it's Marcus Hayes. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. What do you want? I want to meet, just the two of us. No Victoria, no lawyers, just a conversation. Why? Because I think we can help each other. And because I think you're smart enough to know when you're on a sinking ship. Ethan was silent for a moment. Where? There's a coffee shop on 5th Street. Corner table, 1 hour. I'll be there. Marcus hung up without saying goodbye. Ethan stood in the kitchen, his heart pounding. He knew he should tell Victoria. He knew this was probably a trap. But he also knew that information was power. And right now, they needed all the power they could get. He made a decision. He grabbed his phone, opened the voice recorder app, and slipped it into his pocket. Then he left. The coffee shop was nearly empty. Marcus was already there when Ethan arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of espresso in front of him. He looked relaxed, confident, like a man who had already won. Ethan. Marcus gestured to the seat across from him. Thank you for coming. Ethan sat down. What do you want, Marcus? Straight to business. I like that. Marcus leaned back in his chair. I want to be direct with you, Ethan. I know about the contract. I know Victoria paid you to pretend to be her husband. I know exactly what this marriage really is. And I don't blame you for taking the deal. If someone offered me $100,000 to play a role for a year, I'd probably take it too. Marcus smiled. You're not the villain here, Ethan. You're just a guy who was in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place depending on how you look at it. Get to the point. Marcus's smile faded slightly. The point is that this isn't going to end well for Victoria. On Thursday, I'm going to present everything I have to the board. The contract, the financial records, all of it. And when I do, she's going to lose everything. You sound pretty confident about that. I am confident, because I've been planning this for a very long time. Marcus leaned forward. But here's the thing, Ethan. You don't have to go down with her. What do you mean? I mean, I'm offering you a way out. Walk away now. Disappear before Thursday. I'll make sure the contract stays buried. No one will ever know you were involved. Ethan's jaw tightened. And what do you get out of it? I get Victoria alone without her husband standing next to her looking supportive. I get a cleaner narrative. I get what I've always wanted. Marcus shrugged. And you get to go back to your life. Keep the money she's already given you. Move on. Forget any of this ever happened. And if I say no, then you go down with her. Your name gets dragged through the mud. Your reputation gets destroyed. And that pretty little daughter of yours, she grows up knowing her father was part of a fraud. Ethan felt the anger rise in his chest, hot and sharp. Don't, he said quietly. Don't bring my daughter into this. I'm not threatening her. I'm just stating facts. Marcus spread his hands. This is business, Ethan. Nothing personal. I'm giving you a chance to walk away clean. Most people don't get that chance. Ethan sat there, his mind racing. He thought about the offer. He thought about Lily. He thought about the life he could have if he just took the out Marcus was giving him. And then he thought about Victoria, the woman who had sat with him in the dark and told him the truth about her family, the woman who had looked at his daughter with longing in her eyes, The woman who had held his hand in the car because she needed someone and he was there. "No," Ethan said. Marcus blinked. "Excuse me." "I said no. I'm not walking away." "Ethan, think about what you're saying." "I've thought about it, and my answer is no." Marcus's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." Ethan stood up. "I'm not like you, Marcus. I don't abandon people when things get hard. Victoria took a chance on me, and I'm not going to repay that by running the moment you show up with threats. This isn't a threat. It's a reality." "Then I'll deal with reality on Thursday, along with Victoria, together." Marcus stared at him for a long moment. Then he smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was cold and sharp, like a knife. "You know what I find interesting," Marcus said. "Victoria hired you because she thought she could control you. She picked a desperate man with nothing to lose. But somewhere along the line you stopped being controlled." He tilted his head. "You actually care about her, don't you?" Ethan didn't answer. "That's going to make this even harder," Marcus said. "For both of you." "We'll see." Ethan turned and walked out of the coffee shop. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. But he didn't look back. He had made his choice. When Ethan got back to the penthouse, Victoria was in her office surrounded by documents. She had been preparing for Thursday, non-stop, barely sleeping, barely eating. She looked up when he walked in. "Where were you?" Ethan closed the door behind him. "I met with Marcus." Victoria's face went pale. "You what?" "He called me this morning. Asked to meet. I went." "Ethan, are you insane? He's trying to destroy us, and you—" "I recorded everything." Victoria stopped mid-sentence. "What?" Ethan pulled out his phone and held it up. "I recorded the entire conversation, every word." He played it for her. Marcus's voice filled the room, smooth, confident, damning. The offer, the threats, the admission that he had been planning this for a long time. When it was over, Victoria sat back in her chair. "He tried to buy you off," she said quietly. "Yes." "And you said no?" "Yes." Victoria looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Why? Because you didn't deserve to face this alone." Ethan set the phone on her desk. "I told you I wasn't going anywhere. I meant it." Victoria was silent for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked around the desk to stand in front of him. "Do you know what this recording means?" she asked. "It means Marcus tried to interfere with a witness. It means he's not as clean as he pretends to be. It means more than that." Victoria's voice was intense. "It means he's scared. He wouldn't have tried to buy you off unless he was worried about something." "Worried about what? I don't know, but I'm going to find out." Victoria grabbed her laptop and started typing. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked. "Something I should have done months ago. Marcus has been watching me for years. It's time I started watching him." She worked through the night. Ethan brought her coffee, then dinner, then more coffee. He sat on the couch in her office watching her work, waiting for something to break. At 3 a.m., it did. "Ethan?" He sat up immediately. "What?" Victoria was staring at her screen, her face pale. "I found something." Ethan walked over and looked at the screen. It was a log of some kind. Dates, timestamps, file names. "What am I looking at?" "This is an access log from our internal server. It shows every time someone views confidential files, board documents, financial records, personnel files. And," Victoria pointed to a column of entries, "these are all from Marcus's executive account. But look at what he's been accessing." Ethan leaned closer. His blood ran cold. "That's your calendar," he said. "Your emails, your personal correspondence. He's been monitoring me for months, maybe longer." Victoria's voice was tight with anger. "Every email I've sent, every meeting I've scheduled, every private conversation I've had with the board, he's seen all of it." "Is that legal?" "No, it's a direct violation of company policy. It's corporate espionage. Victoria turned to face him. It's grounds for immediate removal from the board. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Hope. This changes everything, he said. Yes, it does. Victoria smiled a real smile, fierce and determined. Marcus wanted a fight. He's going to get one. Thursday came faster than either of them expected. The boardroom was on the 40th floor, all glass walls and leather chairs, designed to intimidate. Ethan sat beside Victoria at one end of the table, facing Marcus and the 7 board members who would decide their fate. Gregory Palmer sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Gregory said. "We're here to address some concerns that have been raised about executive leadership. Marcus, you requested this meeting. The floor is yours." Marcus stood up and buttoned his jacket. "Thank you, Gregory. I want to start by saying that I have nothing but respect for my sister. She's worked hard. She's brought some good ideas to the table." He paused. "But recently I've become aware of some troubling information." He opened a folder and began laying out documents. "This is a contract between Victoria Hayes and Ethan Carter. It clearly states that Mr. Carter was paid to pose as her husband in order to satisfy the marriage clause in our father's will." He spread the pages across the table. "This is a record of financial transfers from Victoria's personal account to Mr. Carter. Over $120,000 in debt payments, plus additional compensation." The board members leaned forward, examining the documents. "This is fraud," Marcus said. "This is manipulation. This is a woman who was so desperate to hold on to power that she hired a stranger to pretend to love her." He looked directly at Victoria. "And it calls into question her fitness to lead this company." The room was silent. All eyes turned to Victoria. She sat perfectly still for a moment. Then she stood up. "Marcus is right," she said. The board members exchanged shocked glances. "Everything he just told you is true. I entered into a contract with Ethan Carter. I paid his debts. I asked him to pretend to be my husband for 1 year." She let that sink in. "And I'm not going to apologize for it." Gregory frowned. "Victoria, let me finish." Victoria's voice was calm but firm. "My father wrote a will that treated marriage like a qualification for leadership, a clause that was archaic, insulting, and designed to control me even from beyond the grave. I did what I had to do to work around it." She walked slowly around the table. "In the 3 years since I took control of this company, I have increased revenue by 38%. I have expanded into 2 new markets. I have transformed Hayes Marketing Group into one of the most respected firms in the industry." She stopped and faced the board. "Would any of that have been possible if Marcus had been in charge?" "That's not the point," Marcus said sharply. "The point is that you lied. I played the game I was forced to play. You broke the rules. The rules were broken to begin with." They stared at each other across the table, years of resentment crackling in the air between them. Then Ethan stood up. Every head in the room turned toward him. "I have something to say," he said. Gregory raised an eyebrow. "Is it relevant?" "Very." Ethan took a breath and began. 2 weeks ago, Marcus Hayes contacted me. He asked to meet privately without Victoria's knowledge. When I agreed, he offered me money to walk away from this marriage. He promised to bury the contract if I disappeared before this meeting." The board members shifted uncomfortably. Marcus's face hardened. "That's a lie." Ethan pulled out his phone. "No, it's not." He pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the room, smooth, confident, utterly damning. "Walk away now. Disappear before Thursday. I'll make sure the contract stays buried. And if I say no, then you go down with her. Your name gets dragged through the mud. Your reputation gets destroyed." The recording played for 2 full minutes. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Gregory looked at Marcus. "Is this accurate?" "It was taken out of context." "It sounds pretty clear to me." But Ethan wasn't finished. "There's more," he said. While preparing for this meeting, Victoria gave me access to her internal files. During my review, I discovered something. He handed Gregory a folder. This is an access log from the company server. It shows that Marcus has been using his executive credentials to monitor Victoria's emails calendar and personal correspondence for the past 18 months. Gregory flipped through the documents, his expression darkening. He's been tracking her meetings with the board, reading her private communications, gathering information to use against her. Ethan's voice was steady. That's not due diligence. That's corporate espionage, and it's a direct violation of company policy. The room erupted. Board members were talking over each other, asking questions, demanding explanations. Marcus tried to speak, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Gregory held up his hand. Enough. The room fell silent. Gregory looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then he looked at Victoria. Then at Ethan. The board needs time to deliberate, he said. Everyone except board members, please leave the room. Victoria, Ethan, and Marcus filed out into the hallway. Marcus grabbed Ethan's arm as soon as the door closed. You just made a very big mistake, he hissed. Ethan pulled his arm free. No, I don't think I did. Marcus's face twisted with rage. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I will destroy you. I will destroy everything you care about. Maybe, Ethan said calmly, but not today. Marcus stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and stalked away down the hallway. Victoria watched him go. He's not going to stop, she said quietly. Even if the board rules against him, he won't stop. I know. You just made yourself his enemy. I know that too. Victoria turned to face him. Her eyes were glistening. Why? She asked. Why did you do that? You could have taken his offer. You could have walked away clean. Ethan thought about the question. Because 3 years ago I watched my wife die, he said slowly. I sat in a hospital room and held her hand while she took her last breath, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. I was powerless. He met Victoria's eyes. I'm tired of being powerless. I'm tired of running from fights because I'm scared of losing. You gave me a chance to stand up for something and I took it. But you could lose everything. I already lost everything once. I survived it. Ethan shrugged. Whatever happens next, at least, I'll know I didn't run away. Victoria stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Ethan froze for a second. Then he hugged her back. They stood there in the hallway holding each other, not caring who might see. Thank you, Victoria whispered against his shoulder. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You didn't have to do any of this. You didn't have to stay. Yes, I did. She pulled back and looked at him. Why? Ethan didn't have an answer. Or maybe he did, but he wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Because it was the right thing to do, he said finally. Victoria nodded slowly. They stood there in silence, waiting for the board to decide their fate. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. Finally the door opened and Gregory stepped out. His expression was unreadable. The board has reached a decision, he said. Victoria straightened. Ethan held his breath. Marcus Hayes is being removed from his position on the board effective immediately. The charges include ethical violations, abuse of executive access, and attempted interference with company proceedings. Ethan felt Victoria's hand find his. Victoria Hayes will retain her position as vice president. However, the marriage contract must be dissolved within 30 days. The board will also be reviewing the terms of your father's will with legal counsel to determine if the marriage clause can be challenged or removed entirely. Gregory paused. It's not a perfect outcome, but given the circumstances, it's the best we can do. Victoria nodded. Thank you, Gregory. Gregory looked at Ethan. You showed a lot of courage today, Mr. Carter. Victoria is lucky to have someone willing to stand up for her the way you did. Thank you, sir. Gregory nodded and went back into the boardroom. Victoria turned to Ethan. Her eyes were bright with tears she was still too proud to shed. "We won," she said, like she couldn't quite believe it. "We won." She laughed, a real laugh full of relief and disbelief, and something that sounded almost like joy. "We actually won." Ethan smiled. "Yeah, we did." They stood there in the hallway, still holding hands, both of them trying to process what had just happened. The contract was over. The fight was over. But somehow, standing there with Victoria's hand in his, Ethan knew that something else was just beginning. They left the building together, walking side by side through the parking garage in silence. The adrenaline was still pumping through Ethan's veins, making everything feel sharp and surreal. They had won. Against all odds, against Marcus, against everything that had been stacked against them, they had actually won. But as they reached Victoria's car, the reality started to sink in. The contract was over. The board had given them 30 days to dissolve the marriage, 30 days to untangle a year's worth of pretending to separate their lives to go back to being strangers. Victoria unlocked the car but didn't get in. She stood there, her hand on the door, staring at nothing. "So?" she said quietly. "What happens now?" Ethan leaned against the car beside her. "I don't know. I guess we figure out the paperwork, sign whatever needs to be signed." "That's not what I meant." Ethan looked at her. "Then what did you mean?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You don't have to stay, Ethan. The contract is over. Marcus is gone. You've done everything you agreed to do." She turned to face him. "You're free." The word hit him harder than he expected. Free. He should have felt relieved. He should have felt like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Instead, he felt something else entirely. Something that felt a lot like loss. "Is that what you want?" he asked. "For me to leave?" Victoria's expression flickered. "It's not about what I want. It's about what's fair. You signed up for 12 months. You gave me more than that. You stood up in front of the board and put everything on the line for me." She shook her head. "I can't ask you to give anything else." "You're not asking." "Ethan, I know what you're doing." Ethan straightened and faced her fully. "You're trying to let me off the hook. You're trying to make this easy for me. Is that wrong?" "It's not wrong. It's just—" He struggled to find the words. "It's not what I need right now." Victoria looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment the mask she always wore slipped away completely. "Then what do you need?" Ethan didn't have an answer. Or maybe he did, but he wasn't brave enough to say it. "I need time," he said finally, "to figure out what my life looks like now, what I want it to look like." Victoria nodded slowly. "That's fair." They stood there in the parking garage, the silence stretching between them. So much had happened in the past few months. So much had changed. And now they were standing at a crossroads, both of them unsure which way to go. "I should get back," Victoria said finally. "There's going to be a lot of cleanup after today." "Yeah, of course." She opened the car door, then stopped. "Ethan." "Yeah. Whatever you decide, whether you stay or go, I want you to know that I don't regret any of it. Not the contract, not the arrangement, not any of it." Her voice was soft. "You're a good man. Better than I deserved." Victoria. But she was already getting into the car. "Take all the time you need," she said. "I'll be here." She closed the door and drove away, leaving Ethan standing alone in the parking garage, feeling like something important had just slipped through his fingers. The next 2 weeks were strange. Ethan was still living in the penthouse, but everything felt different. The urgency was gone. The need to perform, to convince, to pretend, all of it had evaporated. What was left was just two people sharing a space, trying to figure out what they were to each other, now that the contract no longer defined them. Victoria buried herself in work. She was at the office before dawn and came home after midnight. When they crossed paths in the kitchen or the hallway, Their conversations were polite but distant, like colleagues, like strangers. Ethan hated it. He hated the way she wouldn't meet his eyes. He hated the way she kept her distance, always finding an excuse to leave the room when he entered. He hated the way everything they had built over the past year was slowly dissolving, and neither of them seemed to know how to stop it. One night, about 10 days after the board meeting, Ethan couldn't sleep. He got up and walked to the kitchen, intending to get a glass of water. But when he got there, he found Victoria sitting at the counter, a glass of wine in front of her, staring at nothing. She looked up when he walked in. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "No, you haven't tried yet." Ethan grabbed a glass and filled it with water. He stood on the opposite side of the counter looking at her. "You've been avoiding me," he said. Victoria didn't deny it. "I thought it would be easier that way." "Easier for who?" "For both of us." She took a sip of wine. "The contract is ending, Ethan. In a few weeks you'll move out and we'll go back to our separate lives. I thought if we started distancing ourselves now, it wouldn't hurt as much when it actually happened." "Is that what you want, to not be hurt?" Victoria laughed bitterly. "I've spent my whole life trying not to be hurt, building walls, keeping people at arm's length." She looked at him. "And then you came along and somehow got past all of them. Is that a bad thing?" "I don't know." Her voice cracked slightly. "I don't know how to do this, Ethan. I don't know how to let someone in and then watch them leave." "Who says I'm leaving?" Victoria stared at him. "The contract. Forget the contract." Ethan set down his glass and walked around the counter to stand beside her. "Forget the terms. Forget the timeline. Forget all of it. I'm asking you a simple question. Do you want me to stay?" Victoria's breath caught. "That's not fair." "Why not?" "Because if I say yes, I'm asking you to give up your life for me. Your apartment, your independence, your freedom. I can't do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering." "But why?" Victoria stood up, her eyes bright with frustration and something that looked like fear. "Why would you do that? I hired you, Ethan. I bought your time. That's not a foundation for anything real." "Maybe it started that way, but it's not that anymore." Ethan stepped closer. "You know it's not." Victoria shook her head. "I don't know anything. I thought I knew what this was, a business arrangement, a means to an end. But somewhere along the way, it changed. You changed it." "I changed it. You're the one who asked me to come to the park. You're the one who talked to me during the blackout. You're the one who held my hand in the car." "I know." Victoria's voice dropped. "And I shouldn't have. I broke my own rules." "Why did you—" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "Because I was lonely," she said finally. "Because for the first time in years, there was someone in my life who wasn't trying to use me or compete with me or tear me down. You were just there, present, real." She looked at him. "I didn't know how much I needed that until I had it." Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. "Victoria." "But that doesn't change anything." She stepped back, putting distance between them. "I can't be the reason you give up your life. I can't live with that." "What if it's not giving up? What if it's choosing—" "Choosing what?" "You. This. Whatever this is." Victoria stared at him, her expression torn. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying. I've spent the last 3 years surviving, just getting through one day at a time, trying to keep my head above water. And then I met you, and for the first time since Sarah died, I felt like I was actually living again." His voice cracked. "I'm not ready to give that up. I'm not ready to walk away and pretend like none of this mattered." Victoria's eyes glistened with tears she was still fighting to hold back. "What are you asking me, Ethan?" "I'm asking you to let me stay. Not because of a contract. Not because of the board or Marcus or any of that. Just because I want to. Because you want me to." The words hung in the air between them. Victoria didn't move, didn't speak, and then slowly she shook her head. "I can't," she whispered. Ethan felt the words like a physical blow. "Why not?" "Because I'm scared." A tear finally escaped rolling down her cheek. "I'm scared that if I let you in completely, if I let myself believe this is real, I'll lose you, and I don't think I can survive that." "Victoria, I've lost everything I've ever cared about. My mother, my father, my brother's respect, my own sense of who I am." Her voice broke. "I can't add you to that list. I can't." She turned away, her shoulders shaking. Ethan stood there, his heart breaking for her. He understood now. This wasn't about the contract or the board or any of the external obstacles they had faced. This was about something deeper, something Victoria had been carrying her whole life. The fear of being abandoned, the fear of being hurt, the fear of wanting something so badly and having it taken away. He recognized it because he carried the same fear himself. He walked up behind her and gently put his hands on her shoulders. "Hey," he said softly, "look at me." Victoria didn't turn around. "I can't promise you that nothing bad will ever happen," Ethan continued. "I can't promise that we won't hurt each other or that this will work out perfectly. Life doesn't come with those guarantees." He gently turned her to face him. "But I can promise you that I'm not going anywhere. Not because I have to, because I choose to." Victoria looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've already lost everything once. I know what that feels like. And I know that the worst thing I could do now is let fear make my decisions for me." He reached up and wiped a tear from her cheek. "I'm tired of being afraid, Victoria. Aren't you?" She stared at him for a long moment, and then something in her expression shifted. The walls she had built, the walls she had spent a lifetime constructing, began to crumble. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm so tired." Ethan pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest and cried, really cried like she had been holding it in for years. All the pain, all the loneliness, all the fear came pouring out. Ethan held her through all of it. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red and swollen, but something in them had changed. The hardness was gone. The fear was still there, but it wasn't running the show anymore. "So what do we do now?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "I don't know. Figure it out as we go." "That's not much of a plan." "No, but it's honest." Victoria laughed a real laugh, watery and broken, but genuine. "Honest. I think I can work with that." They stayed up talking until dawn. Not about the contract or the board or any of the things that had defined their relationship for the past year. Just talking. About their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. About all the things they had never allowed themselves to share. When the sun came up, Ethan realized something. This was the first time he had seen Victoria completely unguarded. No masks, no armor, no performance. Just her. And she was beautiful. But despite everything they had shared that night, some part of Ethan knew they weren't ready. Not yet. They had spent so long pretending that they didn't know how to be real. They needed time. Space. A chance to figure out who they were outside of the arrangement. "I think I should move out," Ethan said. Victoria's face fell. "I thought, not because I don't want to stay, because I need to figure out what I want this to be." He took her hands. "We started this as a business deal. If we're going to make it something else, something real, we need to do it right. Not because we're living in the same space and it's convenient." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "You're right," she said finally. "I hate it, but you're right. I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying let's start over. Let me take you on a real date. Let me call you because I want to hear your voice, not because we have an event to attend. Like normal people. Like normal people." Victoria smiled sadly. I don't know how to be normal. Neither do I. But maybe we can figure it out together. A week later, Ethan moved his things out of the penthouse. Victoria wasn't there when he left. She had said goodbye the night before, standing in the doorway of his room, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. I hope you find what you're looking for, she had said. I hope so too. Will you call me? Try to stop me. She had smiled at that, a small, fragile smile that made his heart ache. And then she had turned and walked away. Ethan went back to his old apartment. It felt smaller than he remembered, cramped and cluttered compared to the penthouse. But it was his. It was real. He picked up Lily from daycare that afternoon. She ran into his arms the moment she saw him, squealing with joy. Daddy? Daddy, you're back. I'm back, sweetheart, for good this time. Really? Really? Lily pulled back and looked at him with those big brown eyes. What about your special friend Victoria? Ethan's chest tightened. She's still my friend, baby. I'll still see her. Do you love her? The question caught him off guard. I don't know, sweetheart. It's complicated. Lily tilted her head. Mommy used to say, love isn't complicated. Love is easy. It's everything else that's hard. Ethan stared at his daughter, amazed as always by how wise she could be. When did you get so smart? I'm 6, Daddy. I know everything. He laughed and hugged her tight. Yeah, I guess you do. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat in his living room and stared at his phone. He thought about Victoria alone in that big, empty penthouse. He thought about the way she had cried in his arms, the way she had finally let him see the real her. He thought about all the walls she had built and how terrified she was to let them down. He thought about what Lily had said. Love is easy. It's everything else that's hard. Maybe she was right. He picked up his phone and typed a message. I miss you. The response came back almost immediately. I miss you too. Ethan smiled. It wasn't much. It wasn't a solution or a promise or a guarantee, but it was something. And for now, something was enough. The next 3 days were an exercise in restraint. Ethan threw himself back into his old routine: work, daycare, dinner, bedtime stories. The same rhythm he had known before Victoria Hayes walked into his life. Everything was familiar. Everything was normal. Everything felt wrong. He kept reaching for his phone, wanting to call her, wanting to hear her voice. He kept looking up at random moments, expecting to see her walk through the door. He kept dreaming about her, her laugh, her eyes, the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention. On the 4th day, his phone rang. Hello? Ethan. It was Victoria. Her voice sounded different, lighter somehow, but also nervous. Hey, is everything okay? Everything's fine. She paused. I was wondering if you were free this weekend. There's this restaurant I've always wanted to try. It's nothing fancy, just a little place on the east side. Ethan felt his heart skip. Are you asking me on a date? I'm asking you to dinner. Whether it's a date depends on whether you say yes. He smiled. Yes. Really? Really? He could hear the relief in her voice. Saturday at 7. I'll be there. Okay. A pause. I'll see you then. Victoria. Yes. I'm glad you called. Another pause, longer this time. So am I. She hung up, and Ethan sat there staring at his phone, feeling something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Not the expensive kind. Not the kind that came with conditions and contracts and expectations. Just hope. Simple and pure and terrifying. He thought about what the next few months might bring. The challenges they would face. The obstacles they would have to overcome. The 1,000 different ways this could all go wrong. But for the first time in years, he wasn't focused on what could go wrong. He was focused on what could go right. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Saturday arrived with the kind of nervous energy Ethan hadn't felt since he was a teenager. He changed his shirt 3 times, checked his hair in the mirror more than he cared to admit, and nearly forgot to arrange a babysitter for Lily until the last minute. "Daddy, you look weird," Lily said, watching him from the couch as he fumbled with his jacket. "I do." "Yeah, your face is all scrunchy, like when you can't find your keys." Ethan laughed despite himself. "I'm just nervous, sweetheart." "Why?" "Because I'm going to see Victoria tonight." Lily's eyes lit up. "Your special friend, the pretty lady from the park. That's the one. Is she going to be your girlfriend for real this time?" Ethan paused, his hand on the doorknob. "I don't know, baby. Maybe. That's what we're trying to figure out." Lily considered this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster. "I think she should be," she said finally. "She looked at you the way Mommy used to." The words hit Ethan like a wave. "What do you mean?" "You know, like you were the best thing in the whole world." Lily shrugged. "Mommy used to look at you like that. Victoria does too." Ethan knelt down and pulled his daughter into a hug. "When did you get so observant?" "I told you, Daddy. I'm 6. I know everything." He kissed her forehead and stood up. "Be good for Mrs. Patterson, okay? I'll be home before you wake up." "Okay, have fun on your date." The word made his heart skip. Date. This was really happening. The restaurant was exactly what Victoria had described, a small place on the east side, tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. Mismatched chairs. Candles on every table. The kind of place that felt intimate without trying too hard. Victoria was already there when Ethan arrived. She was sitting by the window, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She was wearing a simple blue dress, no jewelry, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked up when he walked in, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then she smiled. Not the controlled, calculated smile he had seen 100 times at board meetings and family dinners. A real smile. The kind that reached her eyes and made something warm bloom in his chest. "You came," she said. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I wasn't sure. Part of me thought you might come to your senses." Ethan sat down across from her. "Too late for that. I lost my senses months ago." Victoria laughed, a genuine, unguarded laugh that made the other diners glance over. "That makes 2 of us." They ordered food neither of them really tasted. They drank wine neither of them really needed. Mostly they talked. But this time was different. There was no agenda, no performance, no contract defining what they could and couldn't say. Just 2 people learning each other for real without the armor they had both been wearing for so long. Victoria told him about the first time she realized she was falling for him. "It was the night the power went out," she said, "when you told me about Sarah, about what it felt like to watch someone you love slip away." She looked down at her wine glass. "No one had ever been that honest with me before. Everyone in my life, my family, my colleagues, everyone, they all want something. They all have an angle. But you just told me the truth. Because you trusted me with it." "I didn't plan to," Ethan admitted. "It just came out." That's what made it real. Ethan told her about the moment he knew things had changed for him. "The wedding photos," he said. "When the photographer told us to look at each other and I looked into your eyes, and for just a second I forgot we were pretending. I forgot about the contract and the board and all of it. All I could see was you." Victoria's breath caught. "I felt that too." "I know. I saw it in your face. And it scared the hell out of me." "Why?" "Because I wasn't supposed to feel anything. That was the deal. No emotions, no complications." He shook his head. "But you made that impossible." "I didn't mean to." "I know. That's what made it so dangerous." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything they had been through settling between them. "So what do we do now?" Victoria asked. "We've admitted we have feelings for each other. We've agreed to try. But I don't know what that actually looks like." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "It looks like this," he said. "Dinner. conversation. Getting to know each other without all the pressure. Taking it one day at a time. That sounds terrifyingly normal. Is that a problem? Victoria smiled. No. I think I could use some normal. They walked along the street after dinner, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement. At some point, Victoria's hand found his, and neither of them let go. Can I tell you something? Victoria said. Anything. When you moved out, I thought I was relieved. I thought it would be easier to go back to the way things were before. Alone. Focused. Safe. And the penthouse felt like a tomb. Every room reminded me of you. The kitchen where we talked during the blackout. The couch where we sat after those terrible family dinners. Even the guest room. She paused. I kept walking past it expecting to hear you moving around inside. Ethan squeezed her hand. I know the feeling. My apartment felt wrong without you. Too quiet. Too empty. We're a mess, aren't we? Complete disaster. Victoria laughed and leaned into him. At least we're disasters together. They stopped at a corner waiting for the light to change. Victoria turned to face him. Ethan. Yeah. Thank you. For giving me a chance to do this right. For not giving up on me when I was too scared to let you in. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Because no one has ever believed in me the way you do. Not my father. Not my brother. Not anyone. Her voice trembled slightly. You saw through all the walls I built, and instead of running away, you stayed. You fought for me. You're worth fighting for. Victoria's eyes glistened. I'm starting to believe that. The light changed, but neither of them moved. Ethan reached up and cupped her face in his hands. Can I kiss you? He asked. Victoria smiled. I thought you'd never ask. He kissed her. It wasn't like the staged kisses at family events, quick, performative, meaningless. This was real. Soft and tentative at first, then deeper, more certain. The kind of kiss that felt like a promise. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria was breathless. Wow, she whispered. Yeah, wow. They stood there on the street corner, foreheads touching both of them, grinning like idiots. So, Victoria said, does this mean we're official? I don't know. What does official mean? It means I get to introduce you as my boyfriend instead of my fake husband. Ethan laughed. That's definitely an upgrade. They walked back to her car, hands still intertwined. I want to meet Lily, Victoria said suddenly. Properly, I mean. Not as your fake wife or your special friend. As someone who actually matters to you. Ethan felt his heart swell. She's been asking about you. She told me tonight that you look at me the way her mother used to. Victoria stopped walking. She said that she's 6. Apparently she knows everything. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I don't want to mess this up, Ethan. With Lily, I mean. She's the most important person in your life. If she doesn't accept me... Hey. Ethan turned to face her. She already adores you. She has since the day you met her in the park. Kids are perceptive. They can tell when someone is genuine. What if I'm not good at this? I've never been around children. I don't know how to... Victoria. He took both her hands. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. That's all Lily needs. All I need. Victoria took a deep breath. Okay, I can do present. Yeah. The following weekend, Ethan invited Victoria to his apartment for dinner. He spent all day cleaning, cooking, and trying to keep Lily from bouncing off the walls with excitement. Is Victoria coming? Is she coming now? What time is she coming? She'll be here at 6, sweetheart. You need to calm down. I can't calm down. I'm too excited. When the doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock, Lily sprinted to the door before Ethan could stop her. She threw it open and stared up at Victoria with wide eyes. Hi, Victoria. Victoria smiled and knelt down to Lily's level. Hi, Lily. It's nice to see you again. Daddy made spaghetti. It's my favorite. Do you like spaghetti? I love spaghetti. Really? That's my favorite too. And he made garlic bread. But he burned the first batch, so he had to make more. Lily! Ethan called from the kitchen, mortified. Victoria laughed. That's okay. I'm sure it will be delicious. Dinner was chaotic in the best possible way. Lily talked nonstop about school, about her dinosaur collection, about the dream she had last night, where she was a princess who rode a T-Rex into battle. Victoria listened to every word, asking questions, laughing at all the right moments. Ethan watched them from across the table, his heart so full it hurt. This was what he had been missing. This was what he had been afraid to hope for. A family. After dinner, Lily insisted on showing Victoria her room. This is Mr. Rex, she said, holding up the stuffed dinosaur. He's my best friend. Mommy gave him to me before she went to heaven. Victoria knelt down and examined the dinosaur with appropriate seriousness. He looks very brave. He is. He protects me from bad dreams. Lily paused, then looked at Victoria with those big brown eyes. Do you have bad dreams? Victoria hesitated. Sometimes. You should get a Mr. Rex. He helps a lot. Victoria smiled, but Ethan could see the emotion behind it. Maybe I will. Lily yawned suddenly, the excitement of the evening finally catching up to her. I think someone's ready for bed, Ethan said. No, I'm not tired, Lily protested, even as her eyes drooped. Nice try, sweetheart. Say goodnight to Victoria. Lily walked over to Victoria and without warning threw her arms around her. Good night, Victoria. I'm glad you're Daddy's girlfriend. Victoria froze for a moment, caught off guard. Then she hugged Lily back, her eyes glistening. Good night, Lily. I'm glad too. After Ethan put Lily to bed, he found Victoria standing in the living room looking at the photos on the wall. Most of them were of Lily, first steps, first day of school, gap-toothed smiles. But there was one of Ethan and Sarah taken on their wedding day tucked into the corner. She was beautiful, Victoria said quietly. Yeah, she was. Lily looks just like her. Everyone says that, but I think she has my stubbornness. Victoria smiled. That's not a bad thing. They sat down on the couch, close but not touching. Thank you for tonight, Ethan said, for being so good with Lily. She's amazing, Ethan. You've done an incredible job with her. I had help. Sarah's memory. Her parents when they can visit. The community of people who showed up after she died. He shook his head. I couldn't have done it alone. You underestimate yourself. Maybe, but I know my limits. I know when I need help. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I never learned how to ask for help, she said. In my family, asking for help was a sign of weakness. You were supposed to handle everything yourself no matter what. That sounds exhausting. It was. It is. She turned to look at him. But with you, I don't feel like I have to be strong all the time. I can just be. Good. That's how it should be. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the apartment quiet except for the distant sounds of the city outside. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Of course. When you look at the future 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, what do you see? Ethan thought about the question. I see Lily growing up, going to school, making friends, having a childhood that's better than what I could give her before. He paused. And I see you, in the picture, part of all of it. Victoria's breath caught. Really? Yeah, I know it's early. I know we're still figuring things out. But when I think about the future, you're there. I can't imagine it without you anymore. Victoria reached over and took his hand. I see the same thing, she said quietly. For so long when I thought about the future, all I saw was the company. Work, ambition, nothing else. She squeezed his hand. Now, when I close my eyes and think about what I want, I see this. A family. A home. Something real. Then let's build it, Ethan said. Together. One day at a time. Victoria smiled. One day at a time. She leaned over and kissed him, soft, sweet, full of promise. When she pulled back, Ethan grinned. So, are we sharing a bed yet? Victoria laughed. Maybe, but not tonight. Fair enough. I can wait. You've already waited this long. What's a little longer? They sat there on his old, worn couch in his small, cramped apartment, and for the first time in years, everything felt exactly right. The months that followed were far from perfect. Victoria and Ethan fought. They made up. They struggled to balance their very different lives, her demanding career, his responsibilities as a single father. There were late nights and early mornings, missed dinners, and rescheduled plans. But there was also laughter. Lazy Sunday mornings with Lily making pancakes that were more batter than breakfast. Movie nights where they all fell asleep on the couch before the credits rolled. Small moments that became the foundation of something bigger. The board eventually struck down the marriage clause in Victoria's father's will. It took 3 months of legal battles, but in the end, the archaic requirement was removed. Victoria's position was secure, not because of a contract or a fake marriage, but because of what she had built. Marcus disappeared from the company entirely. Last anyone heard, he had moved to Europe trying to rebuild his reputation in a place where his name didn't carry so much baggage. Ethan didn't care where he went as long as he stayed away. 1 year to the day after the board meeting, the day when everything had almost fallen apart and somehow came together. Instead, Victoria showed up at Ethan's apartment with a bottle of wine and a nervous smile. "What's the occasion?" Ethan asked. "Anniversary," she said. 1 year since we officially became a real couple, or whatever we are. I think the official term is disaster in progress. Victoria laughed. I prefer work in progress. They sat on the couch, the same couch where they had talked about the future a year ago, and shared the wine. I have something for you, Victoria said. She handed him an envelope. Ethan opened it and found a photograph inside. It was from the wedding photo shoot, the one where they had been asked to look at each other. But this wasn't the posed, polished version. It was a candid shot taken in between takes. In the photo, Victoria was laughing at something Ethan had said. He was looking at her with an expression he hadn't even realized he'd had, soft, unguarded, completely smitten. Where did you get this? I asked the photographer. He had kept all the outtakes. Victoria's voice was soft. This was the moment I knew. The moment I realized that whatever we were pretending to have was becoming real. Ethan stared at the photo, his throat tight. I love you, he said. The words came out before he could stop them. He hadn't planned to say them. Hadn't even been sure he was ready. But the moment they left his lips, he knew they were true. Victoria's eyes went wide. What? I love you, Victoria. I don't know when it happened or how. But I do. I love you. Victoria set down her wine glass. Her hands were trembling. Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you. I love you. She kissed him before he could finish. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. I love you too, Victoria whispered. I've wanted to say it for months. I was just too scared. What changed? You, everything. I stopped being afraid of losing you because I realized something. What? That loving you is worth the risk. That whatever happens, whatever challenges we face, I'd rather face them with you than be safe and alone. Ethan pulled her close, holding her like he never wanted to let go. So, what now? He asked. Victoria smiled against his chest. Now we keep going. One day at a time. Together. That sounds like a plan. It's not much of a plan. No. But it's ours. Later that night, after Victoria had fallen asleep on his shoulder, Ethan looked around his small apartment, the same apartment that had felt so empty a year ago. Now it was filled with photographs of Victoria and Lily, with toys scattered across the floor, with evidence of a life that was messy and imperfect and absolutely worth living. He thought about the man he had been when Victoria Hayes first walked into his life, drowning in debt, barely surviving, terrified of the future. He thought about the offer she had made pretend to be her husband for 1 year in exchange for everything he needed. He had accepted because he was desperate. He had stayed because he had found something he hadn't known he was looking for. Not money, not security, not any of the things the contract had promised. He had found her. And in finding her, he had found himself again. Ethan Carter had spent 3 years learning how to survive. Now finally, he was ready to live. He looked down at Victoria, peaceful in his arms, and smiled. This wasn't how he had expected his story to end. It was better, because this wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Ethan Carter was not afraid of what came next. He was ready for it, ready for the challenges, the joys, the ordinary moments that would become extraordinary, simply because he wouldn't face them alone. Victoria stirred in her sleep and mumbled something he couldn't quite hear. He kissed the top of her head and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring new problems, new obstacles, new reasons to doubt. But it would also bring Lily's laughter, Victoria's smile, the small, precious moments that made everything else worthwhile, and that Ethan decided was more than enough. Love had found him when he least expected it, in a place he never thought to look. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been clean. It had been messy and complicated and terrifying. But it had also been real. And in the end, real was all that mattered.